Hello, Scuttlebutt listeners. I'm William. I'm here with Vic.
Hey.
And we are at day one of Modern Day Marine, and we are here with the CEO, founder, badass dude from Building Momentum, and his name is Brad Halsey. Brad, how are you doing here?
Awesome. How are you guys doing?
Yeah,
today?
doing great. Brad, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, this is awesome.
So if you don't mind, just giving our audience a little bit of your background information of who you are, where you're from, and then how you got here to Modern Day Marine today.
No, thanks for that. Yeah, I was a former Navy officer, got injured in the Middle East, had a shoulder surgery go wrong, and got processed out and was wondering what to do with my life. I decided that I wanted to use my brain instead of my body for my living, so I went to a think tank called Stanford Research Institute out in the Bay Area, and was kind of like a lab nerd. I was a chemistry major at the time, so I was just like doing lab nerd stuff, kind of worked my way up through the company there and got in charge of larger programs, and I could see where they were originating from sort of warfighter needs, but they didn't actually go anywhere. It's like straight out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they like roll the technology up into a warehouse and then shut the door and they're like, thank you, Brad, for all that. DARPA, thanks you. So I got really frustrated with that, and a lot of my friends that were in the sort of past special operations community that were now in this new war in Iraq were just getting chewed up by insurgents who were using pretty clever and insidious little technologies like microcontrollers and things. So I was frustrated and also fascinated by that. So I left that company, got a consulting gig with the Army, and just went to Iraq in 2008. And had a little lab in Baghdad, but just went on every mission that I could go on. We used to have a saying that if you ask a soldier in that place in sort of Iraq at the time what their problems were, they would have said, I want more nicotine and more porn. And so there's a reason why you go on mission with them, is so you can see the problems, because sometimes they just can't see it. And so I learned a lot about the problems that were emanating from Al-Qaeda at the time, how they were using technology to sort of outpace us, and I got really interested in how we can start doing that. So when I came back after a year of doing that in 2008, the Army wanted more of that. So I started training nerds to go to war. But what I realized is just because you're number one in your class at Stanford or MIT does not mean you're worth a shit at actually building anything useful. And so I made that mistake, sent some people across the pond, and they didn't do well. So I developed a weed out program for nerds. It was like this 7-day, here's a technology, build me something. Here's another thing, build me something. Go.
Like a nerd crucible?
It was like a nerd crucible. Also the name of my progressive rock band.
Yeah, there you go.
And so we taught them all these things, and then I would weed out, and we did some like weapons training and combat first aid stuff just to see how nerds would work in that environment as well. And being a nerd, I know that sometimes like those things bring a realism to the situation you're not used to, so people could like panic or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd weed out a couple of those people, and I did this for years. So sent nerds over to these labs that we helped build for the Army. They called them X Labs, but we designed and helped build some of these labs, put them overseas. Really fell in love with doing the training. Didn't think I would like that as much, but I fell in love with that, and I fell in love with doing the mission itself. So I saw sort of the Afghan war winding down, the Iraq war winding down, and I wanted to start building momentum to continue doing that, to train people to solve their own problems, to do it myself when needed. And it sort of grew from there. We've trained something like 9,000 service members in our flagship training program called Innovation Boot Camp, which is like essentially it's training you to become a insurgent or a MacGyver on all of today's latest tech. So you learn 3D printing and coding and how to build a drone from scratch and how to build a robot and how to set up sensor networks. So we do that in a crazy paced week-long program.
And that building that foundation, it isn't like, hey, I've got to procure a bunch of gear, or and I think you used the term when we were talking earlier, but it's modern day foraging.
It is. So we do it one of two ways. You can come to our facility in Alexandria, and we will have stuff for you. Sometimes we'll ship stuff. Like we're going to Japan in 2 weeks. We already ship pallets of gear out there because Okinawa sometimes doesn't have some of those things. Or the clientele does want us to do that. So we have a group that just went to Africa that are looking to have us come in and work with them on the ground in Africa to use resources there and do the technical foraging. So can you build a drone on Mali parts?
Right. Right.
And so that's less about expertise in any one area, and it's about the knowing how to get that knowledge and looking and going into a shop in some weird part of the world and going, I know what that part actually does. I know it's fundamental sort of like physics and electronics, so I can make that into something So that is one part of the company that we do on the teaching side. And then we like to go to places and help. So I was in Ukraine in the fall, largely to do humanitarian response and humanitarian help, but also to learn what is evolving on the battlefield. And that is insane.
Do you mind touching up some of your experiences over there and talking about how the character of war has changed from your observations?
It's almost in an anecdote. I got texted one morning, hey, do you want to Uber to the front lines? I have a new drone that I want to test. This like literally happened. So it was a guy who is a former marketing guy. He had made, he got fed up with Russia attacking his country and stopped doing the marketing thing. Got on YouTube and GitHub and figured out how to make a drone. He made a whole bunch of them. He got a bunch of pilots together, and they would, no shit, like YouTube to the front, or Uber to the front lines, or rideshare, and try stuff.
Man, that tip has to be off the chain, though.
Yeah.
That's 5 stars for sure. Yeah, and so it became that. And I realized that's what warfare looks like. It is not this big leviathan of platforms coming together and it's sort of like out of Pacific Rim, right? You know, these big machines. Yeah. No, it's in the cracks where these changes are made, and no one teaches that. And that is our biggest crusade at Building Momentum, and that's why the Marine Maker program has asked us to shepherd that process, is that no one teaches how to do this stuff. Like you just go buy a platform, you use it until it breaks, you have a maintenance program, and all, but that you're already like way behind the technological cycle of the world and of industry and of commercialization. So but Ukraine has shown that. Ukraine's greatest weapon is its population. Right, it's the people. It's the people that said, "Oh, I know how to do this. Let me get on YouTube." And YouTube is the greatest repository of information ever designed. Right, so you just get on there. And you're like, "I know how to make a drone drop a Molotov cocktail onto somebody," and you just do it. And so, but we don't. The armed services here don't really teach that, other than in small pockets of like different, JSOC groups and weird ODA groups where we actually teach a lot of those guys these things. The services writ large do not embrace that asymmetry and the craziness that we saw.
Yeah. Well, and I want to mention that because, you mentioned that you were a former naval officer, but I mean, not just the naval officer, you were a teams guy, right?
I was an EOD guy for a while.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, Monster Garage all over the place, right?
Yeah, it was, but that was prior to 9/11, and so it was still very much salvage, and, it wasn't this like running through the sand. It was a lot of my friends ended up doing it and disarming on the fly. It wasn't as much of that. It was just sort of systematic, go underwater, do your thing. Here's your TTPs, and that Iraq showed us these lessons.
You're about to say, yeah.
But we were like, oh, that's a force that has to maneuver in the cracks because they don't have the Al Qaeda doesn't have the platforms, they don't have the funding,
right?
And then so we kind of didn't take it super seriously. And then we saw the same thing in Afghanistan, where I would see the Taliban innovating, and not as much so I don't think as Al Qaeda, but they were innovating and doing some interesting things. And we're like, well, that's because they have to. They don't have big jets. And then now we watch Ukraine, and it's like, oh, maybe we're the assholes here. Maybe we're Russia in this situation because we have these big platforms, and all again, modern day Marine, love it. But if you walk around here, you can see a lot of these large platforms that if one change happens, it takes a decade to change those platforms.
Yeah.
And the enemy goes, oh, that's easy. Let's just attack that because they can't rep cycle. They can't come up with a solution in an amount of time that makes sense.
Well, and we've also, as you know, we got caught in sort of this like FOB fixed structure mentality where it's like, well, if it breaks, I'll just take it back and then I'll get a new piece of gear. And I think we might have lost a little bit of that like, well, it's only broken in its initial functionality, but it can still work for other things too, or I can make it do what it needs to do for a little while.
That's right, and so there's a problem there where if your radio breaks, you have to send it back to the PM, and you have to do this whole process. But like, I can probably crack into that thing and make it still work, or I can crack into that thing and make it, detonate something. I can still make that useful.
It's not a radio, but a big hell of a bomb.
Right. Yeah. And so, these are real things. And so I get really frustrated with that process. And what we try to do is show people that you don't like, I talked about this with drones. There was a story a bunch of years ago where I was in a conference like this and I was talking to this Marine and I said, hey, I heard you were like the drone guy. And he goes, I was flying on this base, but they shut me down because I crashed a drone into a tree. And I said, oh, man, that sounds stupid. He goes, this is even stupider. That same week they had a live fire exercise where a round went off the helmet of some Marine. And I said, did they shut all live fire exercises down? He's like, no. So it's sort of this like adamancy to not move at the pace. And to anyone listening, the pace is all that matters. The time is all that matters. Anything that takes 10 years to make is done. Why? I ask this question a lot to some of my OSD friends. Like, why do? Well, I'll give you another example. I was asked to think about the cockpit of 2040 for a helicopter. Someone asked me to submit a proposal for that, and they gave me tasks 1 through 7 on what the cockpit needs to do. So I resubmitted it back to them with task 0. Convince me that there needs to be a human in a cockpit in 2040.
Right.
And I just submitted that, and they're like, we got the award on that one. Because that is, that's the question no one's asking. Like, why do we have aircraft carriers? Why do we have jets with humans?
Right.
And so I think the building momentum in particular, we tend to poke at everyone in the eye on these things, because if you just think for a minute like what the future looks like, it is a super fast evolving thing, and these platforms can't do it. And Ukraine is like all in our face about this.
Yeah.
And no one I don't know if we're just not ready to make those changes, but drones are the perfect example of that. I can fly a drone so much easier in Kuwait or in Japan than I can on any USMC range. I think I was telling you guys this earlier.
Yeah.
We're going to Japan in 2 weeks. Japanese government totally cool with us flying drones all over the place. We have been trying for months and months and months and months with the Marine Corps to get a drone to fly. It's the only 2 places I can't fly in Japan. It's over their airports and over U.S. military bases.
No, that's pretty cool. You were telling us earlier. Do you mind recounting what you're doing in Japan in a couple weeks?
So thank you. We're doing this whole exercise based essentially on Ukraine. We're doing a beach landing so we take everyone through a week of our innovation boot camp and a week through our drone boot camp, essentially. So 2 different not competing, but they're on the same team, but 2 different things. And they come together in this week-long exercise that the first couple days, they just have to figure out which end is up. They have to know that we're going to unleash this whole scenario on them. Day 3, they get inserted at dawn on a beach with 3D printers and solar panels and all the gear they need for that week. They have wounded on the beach. They have to make tracked robots in real time. So we're going to have welders and generators on the beach. They're going to have to learn how to weld. Maybe we have taught them beforehand. Maybe we'll teach them on the spot. They weld up these robots. They will autonomously or radio-controlled move the wounded on litters up the beach until they reach Japanese vehicles. Not 7 tons, because guess what? Guess what, everybody in Japan? 7 tons are not going to work in an actual combat scenario. They're going to immediately get stuck in the
roads
mud
aren't
and
big
done.
enough.
They're
Yeah.
done. So why are we not practicing using Japanese vehicles? But anyway, so we're going to use Japanese vehicles, get them onto another range, where on that range they're going to be 3D printing on solar, because that's going to be the case. You're not going to have reliable power, and you're going to be 3D printing critical parts. In this case, I think we're going to be doing Javelin parts, or Syscom might give us another part to print. And then they're going to exfil those parts using drones to another LZ where they're shipped out. So, and then, I forgot to tell you guys this last time, we're going to have Op4 running around with paintball guns, intercepting
Nice.
and disrupting all of that. So the units will also have to learn how to use the drones for surveillance and setting up camera systems and camera networks and sensors like tripwires and all these things to digitally tell them when people are coming. So, and if you know some of the ranges in Okinawa, there's only a few ingress routes. If they do it right, they're going to realize that guns do not win the day. Guns will not work. We did this a couple years ago at Camp Buring in Kuwait, where we had a special operations unit attack with paintball guns a Marine unit that was just using electronics and tech, and the special operations unit got housed. Because
they always knew where they were.
Because technology is so much more powerful than guns. And, the future won't, guns are at the last resort. You have to be this close for guns to work, right? Drones can go 20 miles and deliver you ammunition on your head, right?
Right. That's so interesting. So you'd mentioned this earlier about the Marine Maker. How did you guys get linked up with Marine Maker?
That was a crazy story. So it started with a guy that's actually running around here today, General Frank Kelly, or former General Frank Kelly. He bounced into me at some makerspace and was wondering what the hell I was doing with this big whiteboard. And I said, I'm prepping. I have a brand new company called Building Momentum. I'm prepping for a training session for a bunch of Army folks who are getting ready to deploy. He's like, what are you teaching them? And I said, same thing, 3D printing, all these things. He sends me an email the next morning. He's like, we should get coffee. And then he introduces me to this Captain Chris Wood, at the time in the Marine Corps. He's one of these unicorn type of people. He ends up, in a longer story, gets the 3-star General Dana to come down to my dingy-ass basement in Alexandria, Virginia. His whole entourage comes down, and it is like, I have a bowl of hummus. I have robots running around. I got, a drone and a couple things and 3D printers that I had to make out of wood because I didn't have enough money to buy 3D printers at the time, so we made them out of wood, and then we bought the components and all the servos, and we just put it all together out of that.
That's
and so he comes down and he's like, he's kind of like, what the fuck is this? And I said, this is the future of what you guys have to do, because if you want to be the pirates of the Navy, like, you got to operate like the pirates of the Navy. Like, you have to work in the cracks of things. And so he's like, I want all this. And so in like 2.5 months, we were under contract and teaching units. So we had this trailer we built. It was a mobile classroom. It's a NASCAR trailer that had like 8 stations in it and welders and generators and the whole thing. And we would rock up onto places. No one really wanted to come to our training at first. So, what is this? We're riflemen. That's what we have to do. Over the course of the year, as we would rock up into Pendleton and Lejeune, there would be lines of cars waiting to get into our training in the event anyone dropped out. And that's when we knew that, like, there's an appetite for learning the MacGyver, in the field DIY tech stuff, the technical foraging, all those things. And we would go to Dermo and, like, kind of, rat fuck through this stuff and grab things out and be like, okay, you're using this today and build me a this. And
Yeah.
and then our scenarios got really elaborate, and they still are. It's just like I was telling you about Japan. We would bring an Op-4 and be like, okay, I want you to, like, shoot at these dudes the entire time while they have to build this robot to go do a thing. And that became sort of, Marine Maker went from, like, training a few hundred people a year to now thousands every year.
Yeah.
And it's making the Marine Corps kind of the vanguard in this space. If you talk to other services, they're like, we want to do what the Marine Corps is doing.
That's great to hear, because it sounds like an awesome time. Like,
Yeah,
you
it
just must be having a blast, like, every time you go out to one of these things.
And people say like, where's your top cover? Well, it's actually the Commandant. If you look at the Force Design 2030, if you read through those documents, and you heard them today talking about this, we got to move faster even. We have to look at what industry is doing, what commercialization is doing. Yeah, I hate to say it, but it's not a lot of the stuff here. It's the stuff you will find on the shelves of Best Buys and on Amazon. And so that's our top cover. When people come in and get mad at me because I flew drones in their spaces or I did a thing they weren't expecting, I just kind of whip that document out. It's like, this is kind of my top cover. It's like the reality of the future. So.
Well, it's like we're talking about with Sergeant Major Black. I mean, if logistics is the pacing function and you're alone and completely afraid on some island chain, you're going to have to figure out logistics, man. Like, so, this is such a cool thing. Like, we're checking out your booth, and so, I would think highly encouraged, right?
Yeah, definitely. For all of our dear Gazette listeners who are out there, please write articles talking about how we need to innovate and get range time for a lot of these drones, because if we're behind the curve, as Brad's telling us, we need to pick up the pace on that. So if you don't mind, tell me how is a typical program or session for you, for someone who comes in? Like what's like the process?
So we have 2 ways to do it. We have seats that you guys could actually buy into here in Alexandria. We have calendar dates where you can swipe a card, get into our class. It's like $6,000 to get in for a week. You get, like I mentioned, you take home a 3D printer, you take home all this tech. And that could be anybody. It could be you and an FBI person and a SEAL team guy and an ODA. It's all these weird people, and we take you through the same week of 3D printing and CAD in one day. Then it's like electronics and coding, and you make circuits and things the next day, and then you build a robot and you fight robots the next day. And then we teach you how to use programmable radios. We teach you how to build GPS trackers. Then we move the scenario into the larger city of Alexandria. We've done things even as crazy as like sensorizing an actual bar in downtown. If you've ever been to O'Connell's, we had a surveillance team actually surveil that place. We had the owner the manager was a friend at the time, and we had some actors come in and play the bad guys, and they had to catch everything and send all the video back across the town. So we do bleed into the area. But so that's one way we do it. We do it here in Alexandria, and then you can just buy those on our website. The other way is that we work with groups like Space Force, like the JSOC folks, like the Marine Corps, and we bring all that to you. So you just give me a classroom, and I will do everything else. And that's another way. And so the people that come into our training, I kind of don't give a shit what your background is, as long as you are in a place where you need critical problem solving.
Yeah.
So it turns out medics are really great. One of our best drone pilots was a medic because the light clicked on one day, and he's like, I can deliver morphine across the battlefield and stay here. And so he developed this whole drone dropping mechanism on his 3D printer that he could, and he did this in Kuwait kind of all by himself after we left, that he could fly a drone across the swath of desert and then just like drop a bunch of morphine down and come back, and then do the same thing with the first aid kit. So it's the people that people think that it's because we have 3D printing that you really want machinists and those type of people. And it turns out the best performing people in our training are those that see crazy everyday problems or need to be in that space. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
That is. Do you have any way you like to, social media or anything you like to plug while you're here?
God dang it.
I'm
terrible at marketing.
Buildmo.com, right? Is it?
Buildmo.com is our website. I tend to be somewhat active on LinkedIn. That tends to be where people can get a hold of me the best.
Okay.
Go to my LinkedIn profile.
We'll link that stuff on our show description.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at social media. We have an Instagram site, and you just look at BuildMo. Yeah, I mean, we're very reputation based, and so the people that know us can kind of get to us. But I guess that's why we're here. Is that I need to get better at like evangelizing the crazy. 'Cause we are definitely crazy.
Well, I mean, building momentum. It sounds like you guys are well on your way. So best of luck to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk to us.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great, awesome.
All right.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. I am William Truding, but you've also heard the voices or contributions of Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Lichman, retired Frazier. The opinions expressed in this episode do not reflect the official stance of the Marine Corps, DoD, or Marine Corps Association.